The hospital director berated the black girl at the front desk, not knowing she was a doctor from Johns Hopkins. "You're not qualified to greet my patients, let alone touch them." Those were the first words Dr. Amara Lewis heard from the man who didn't even bother asking her name. It was Amara's first day at Ridgeway Medical Center, a high-ranking hospital in the outskirts of Atlanta. She had arrived early, in her neat teal scrubs, ID badge clipped, stethoscope tucked discreetly into her coat pocket. But as she stood behind the front desk, glancing at the system, trying to help a flustered elderly patient navigate her appointment, a man in a dark gray suit stormed toward her like a thundercloud. His voice was acidic, slicing through the sterile air of the lobby. "Excuse me, what are you doing behind the desk?" he barked. Amara turned, startled. "Good morning. I said, what are you doing?" he repeated, louder now, drawing the attention of everyone within earshot. "This is not some corner clinic in the ghetto. We don't let just anyone man the front lines here." The old woman Amara was helping shrank back, horrified. The security guard at the entrance straightened. Nurses froze mid-stride. Amara felt a knot coil in her chest. She looked around. No one was intervening. She stood up straighter, choosing calm. "I'm Dr. Amara Lewis. I just transferred from—" He cut her off, snorting. "From where? Community college? You people just don't understand professional standards." Her hands clenched, hidden behind the desk. "You people." The phrase hit her like a slap, familiar, ugly, used to cage people like her. Like her father, a Vietnam vet who drove buses for 30 years. Like her grandmother, a midwife who had delivered half the babies in Montgomery with nothing but towels and faith. "I graduated from Johns Hopkins School of Medicine," she said clearly, her voice slicing through the silence. "I'm here for my first rotation in cardiology." There was a beat of silence, the kind that hangs heavy and thick. Then laughter. Cold. Dismissive. "Right." The man sneered, smirking now. "Let me guess, diversity hire?" Amara's jaw tightened. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. Her stethoscope glinted subtly under her coat. "Sir," she said, low but firm, "I suggest you speak to HR before you continue. I have my credentials, and I am scheduled to begin rounds in 15 minutes. But he didn't listen, didn't care. He waved over a young white nurse instead. "Tina, please escort this young woman back to wherever she's supposed to be. This isn't a waiting room for job applicants." The nurse, visibly uncomfortable, glanced between the two. "Sir, she's listed on today's physician roster. She's assigned to Dr. Kravitz's team." "She's what?" His voice rose. It was at that moment the chief medical officer, Dr. Kravitz himself, appeared at the end of the hallway. Middle-aged, white, with an expression somewhere between clinical and tired, he strode up quickly, sensing the tension. "What's going on here?" Kravitz asked. Before Amara could speak, the man jumped in. "This woman is impersonating staff. She says she's a doctor. I don't know how she got past the front desk." Kravitz raised an eyebrow. "This woman," he said, motioning to Amara, "is Dr. Lewis. From Johns Hopkins. I specifically requested her myself. And you are?" The man's face paled slightly. "I'm Richard Holloway, Director of Operations." "Well, Director Holloway," Kravitz said sharply, "you might want to learn the names and faces of the staff who'll be saving lives under your roof. Or would you prefer another diversity lawsuit on your desk?" Silence again, but this time it was heavier. Holloway's lips twitched, struggling between pride and panic. He gave Amara a once-over, then scoffed. "My mistake," he muttered, and walked away briskly. Amara let out a breath. Her hands were still shaking. Kravitz looked at her and nodded. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "Yeah, just not the welcome I expected." "You'll find medicine is often cleaner than the politics around it," he said. "Come on, let's show them what a Hopkins doctor can do." What she didn't realize then was that this moment was only the first ripple in a storm she never asked for but was more than ready to face. The days that followed were both grueling and illuminating. Amara worked 14-hour shifts, sometimes longer, rotating between ICU and surgical support, shadowing attendings, and occasionally stepping in to stabilize patients on the brink. Word spread quickly about the incident on her first day, and the looks she received were mixed, some apologetic, some skeptical, some coldly amused. The black nurses gave her quiet nods in the hallway. A few whispered, "Don't let him break you." But it wasn't just Holloway. There were doctors who talked over her, patients who asked if she was the nurse, and janitors who looked surprised when she asked about their kids. But Amara never snapped, never flinched. Her precision in diagnosing a heart murmur that everyone else missed earned her respect from Dr. Yu, the no-nonsense attending with a reputation for not trusting residents. A 17-year-old boy came into the ER with chest pain and ended up being one of her toughest cases, but when she caught the subtle signs of Marfan syndrome in time to prevent an aortic rupture, the boy's mother wept in her arms. Still, Director Holloway kept his distance, except when necessary and even then, only with clipped emails or terse hallway nods. But Amara noticed something strange. Her requests for basic equipment were frequently delayed. Her shifts were changed without warning. She was pulled from key surgeries last minute and reassigned to clerical tasks. It became clear this was a pattern. One day, she returned from her rotation to find a formal complaint in her inbox, accusing her of overstepping boundaries and causing disruption with her attitude. No signature, no witness, just a vague allegation filed under administrative review. She stared at the screen, trembling not with fear, but fury. That night, she didn't sleep. She dug into the hospital's protocols, logged every task, documented every decision. She emailed her mentors at Johns Hopkins. She compiled every case, every commendation, every patient she had helped. If they were going to fight her with shadows, she would come armed with light. 2 weeks later, she was summoned to a board meeting. 12 white faces, one long mahogany table, Director Holloway at the center. They called it a review of professionalism. Amara stood straight, presenting her portfolio. She outlined her diagnostic work, her patient outcomes, her research citations, even patient letters. She read, without emotion, the anonymous complaint and then offered security footage from that day, showing her in the supply room, far from the event in question. And then, in a calm, unwavering voice, she said, "If I had been white, would this meeting be happening?" No one answered. She closed her folder. "This hospital has a choice. You can keep pushing out the people who look like me, or you can grow into the excellence you claim to represent." Then she left, and what came next would shake Ridgeway to its foundations. The fallout began quietly. Mails slowed, gossip turned inward, and certain hallway conversations stopped the moment Amara entered. For a few days, the hospital felt like a war zone in a ceasefire. No apology came, no acknowledgement, but she could feel the shift. Eyes watched her not with dismissal now, but with calculation. She had rattled the floorboards, and the building was listening. 3 days after the board meeting, Dr. Kravitz approached her while she was charting vitals in the cardiology wing. "You made quite an impression," he said simply. Amara raised an eyebrow. "I'm assuming you don't mean just on the patients." Kravitz half smiled, then leaned on the counter. "They're not used to being called out. Most people take the hit, wait out their residency, and leave. I'm not most people. I know." He paused. "I read your file again. Your fellowship research on atrial septal defect closure rate's impressive. It's rare to see someone push through like you did, with the background you came from. You had every reason to quit." She met his eyes, unblinking. Quitting was never an option. "For people like me, it's not even a luxury." He nodded slowly. "Just keep your armor on. And remember, the ones who fight the system tend to leave a dent, but the system always pushes back." That same evening, she got a message from her old mentor at Hopkins DR. Clarissa Renner, the cardiothoracic legend who had once told Amara during a brutal 4 a.m. shift, "No one gives you a seat at the table. You walk in, build your own chair, and bolt it to the floor." Renner's email was short. "Heard what's happening. I'm watching. Let me know if you need backup." Amara didn't respond, but her chest burned with something close to resolve. What she didn't know yet, what none of them did, was that she was about to get the opportunity of a lifetime, and it would come in the form of tragedy. It was the last Friday of the month when the code blue was called. Patient, male, 56, collapsed during an outpatient angioplasty. Sudden cardiac arrest. No pulse. CPR initiated en route to ICU. Amara had just ended her shift, but ran toward the commotion the second the alert blared through the speakers. When she arrived, the room was a blur. Nurses barking stats, the crash cart open, a team frantically taking over compressions. "Where's you?" someone shouted. "Where's the attending?" He scrubbed an at or two. "He can't leave." Amara stepped forward. "I'll lead. What's the status?" No one stopped her. No one second-guessed. She scanned the monitor. V-fib. They had maybe 2 minutes. She ordered another AP push, resumed compressions, and counted the rhythm. The patient was teetering on the edge. She reviewed the chart: mid-action history of stents, recent weight loss, family history of arrhythmias. Clear, she shouted, grabbing the paddles. Charging to 200 joules shock on my count. Ready, the nurse said. 3, 2, 1 shock. The man's chest jolted. Flatline. Again. Charging 250 this time. Clear. This time the screen stuttered. A beat. Then another. A pulse. Got him, a nurse yelled. They erupted into motion, stabilizing vitals, prepping for immediate transport. Amara wiped the sweat off her brow, her hands shaking. Not from fear but from the sheer adrenaline of saving a man who had been seconds from death. Later that night, as she was packing up, Director Holloway appeared outside the ICU. She saw him through the glass doors frozen, watching the nurses whisper to each other, pointing toward her. When he finally approached her, his expression was unreadable. You led that crash team? I did, she answered. He survived. She nodded once. Vitals are holding. Cardiology will monitor through the night. A long pause. Then, something strange happened. I reviewed your board file, Holloway said. And his voice tightened. You've been here 6 weeks. You've saved 4 lives, identified 3 critical diagnostic errors, and have 2 written commendations from Dr. Kravitz. I have, she said, her tone neutral. I may have misjudged you. Amara stared at him, searching his face. Was that remorse? Or calculation? You didn't misjudge me, she said. You dismissed me. He flinched just barely. But he didn't argue. I'd like to make it right, he said stiffly. She didn't answer. Dr. Lewis, he continued. There's an opening on the Internal Review Committee. It's rare for residents, but given your conduct under pressure, I'd like to recommend you. Amara folded her arms. You want me to sit at the table? Yes. She gave him a long look. Then you better pray I don't flip it over. Word spread fast. A black resident, 6 weeks into her rotation, being appointed to the Internal Review Committee. It sent waves through the hospital. Some praised her. Others whispered about tokenism. But Amara didn't care. She read every case, showed up to every meeting. She watched Holloway closely, how he wielded authority, how the other men deferred to him, how many nurses' complaints were lost in the shuffle. Then came the file that would change everything. It was a complaint from a surgical tech named Marisol Vega, Latina, 10 years at Ridgeway. Clean record. Her file said, terminated due to repeated insubordination. But something in the report felt off. Amara requested access to internal messages. She found emails where Marisol had reported a senior surgeon for mocking her accent. A week later, she was written up for lateness, despite her time card showing otherwise. Amara compiled the evidence, brought it to the committee. Holloway shifted uncomfortably in his seat. This is not under the purview of this board, he said flatly. I disagree, Amara replied. This is about patient safety. You terminated a 10-year tech without cause, jeopardizing 2 departments and silencing a legitimate complaint. The room went quiet. Then file a formal motion, another board member said cautiously. If you have enough evidence. She did. The motion was approved 6-2. Holloway left that meeting without a word. The next week, a local news reporter contacted her. Someone had leaked the crash team footage. Her name was all over it. You're the woman who saved that man, the reporter said. We'd like to profile you for our Black History Month spotlight. A Johns Hopkins doctor pushing through barriers at Ridgeway. She was hesitant, but the story aired, and it spread. Other women of color, nurses, aides, EMT, mailed her, told her their stories, their warnings, their strength. One night, while Amara was eating lunch alone in the cafeteria, an elderly black custodian approached her. You her? The woman asked. Amara looked up. Sorry. The doctor. The one who stood up to Holloway. Amara nodded slowly. The woman smiled, eyes glinting. My granddaughter's in med school now. I showed her the news segment. Told her, see? They can't silence you if you speak loud enough. Amara felt tears well in her eyes. But Holloway wasn't finished. 2 days later, she received a memo. She was being transferred early. Due to staffing needs, it read. Effective immediately. Her heart dropped. She went to Kravitz. Is this your call? No, he said grimly. It came from above me. Holloway. He didn't confirm, but he didn't deny it either. "This isn't a demotion," he said. "You're being moved to pediatrics. But you're not being punished. They're just trying to quiet the noise." She exhaled slowly. "So I do everything right and they still move me." "I'll fight it," he offered. "But it may make things worse." She looked at him. "Let them move me. I'll shine there too." And she did. In pediatrics, she saved a 3-year-old with congenital heart failure, helped a teenager with type 1 diabetes manage his condition for the first time in years. She started a weekend initiative for health literacy among Black families funded anonymously, until she discovered it had come from Dr. Renner. Through every transfer, every slight, Amara never backed down. And soon, neither did others. It began with a mural. No announcement. No committee vote. No staff-wide memo. Just one morning, in the pediatric wing, where Amara now worked, a new mural appeared, bold, vibrant, covering the hallway that led to the children's oncology unit. It showed children of every race, arms linked, dancing around a giant heart. Beneath them, in careful script, were the words, "Courage doesn't wear a color." Some believed it was just art. Some believed it was a message. But those who knew the truth, the nurses who had seen the confrontations, the interns who had heard the rumors, the patients who had watched Dr. Amara Lewis work miracle after miracle, knew exactly what it meant. The heart wasn't just a symbol of medicine. It was her. And that mural was the first crack in the stone wall that Holloway had built. The second crack came from within. A young Black intern named Darren Boldenquiet, observant, knocked on Amara's office door one late afternoon, his hand trembling slightly as he held a folder to his chest. "I didn't know who else to talk to," he said. She welcomed him in. He placed the folder on her desk. Inside were screenshots of text messages, emails, performance evaluations, all targeting him. He had been systematically excluded from procedures, given poor evaluations for things he had no control over, and his requests for mentorship were repeatedly ignored. "The same attending who said I had bad instincts also used to call me kiddo in front of patients," Darren said. "And he told me I should switch to family medicine. That cardiology was too intense for someone like me." Someone like me. The phrase echoed again in Amara's mind. She placed her hand over the folder. "We're not going to let them bury this." By month's end, 3 more interns came forward. One was a Latina named Isabella, who had been praised publicly but told privately she had a cultural attitude problem and was too emotional. Another was a Korean-American resident named Jahun, who had overheard the phrase language barrier risk in a meeting despite speaking English natively. Each case on its own might have been brushed off, but together, they formed a pattern, one impossible to ignore. Amara compiled everything into a formal report, documented cases, witness statements, personnel evaluations, board meeting transcripts. She structured it the way she had been trained to write her medical research: clinical, thorough, unshakable. And when she submitted it, she copied not only the hospital's HR department but the Georgia State Medical Board. And the press. The silence afterward was deafening. For days, it was as if Ridgeway had been paralyzed. Administrators closed their doors. Holloway was nowhere to be seen. Whispers floated through every corridor like static electricity. And then, the dam broke. An investigative reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution published a story titled, "Systemic Bias in White Coats: Inside Ridgeway Medical's Culture of Silence." Amara's name was there. So was Darren's. So were the statistics: painful, damning, true. Over 70% of disciplinary warnings in the past 3 years were issued to staff of color. White residents were 4 times more likely to be nominated for specialty fellowships. 2 Black nurses had filed lawsuits in the last 5 years. Both were settled quietly. Holloway denied everything, released a carefully worded statement. But it was too late, because by then, the hospital was already under investigation. And the board? They weren't about to sync with him. The emergency board meeting was held on a stormy Monday morning. Rain battered the glass walls of the top-floor conference room. Amara was asked to attend, but this time, not as a subject, as a witness. She wore her white coat, not because she needed it to prove who she was, but because it belonged to her now, as much as her name. She sat across from Holloway, who avoided her gaze. The room was quiet as the chairman of the board cleared his throat. After reviewing all reports and witness accounts, he began. "The Ridgeway Board of Directors has voted unanimously to relieve Director Holloway of his duties, effective immediately." The words hung in the air like bells after a funeral. Holloway stiffened. For the first time, Amara saw something crack behind his eyes. Not anger, not arrogance. Fear. He stood, slowly, adjusting his jacket. Said nothing. But as he turned to leave, he finally looked at Amara. His expression twisted between bitter shame and something else seen unspoken acknowledgement. And then he was gone. The days that followed felt unreal. Some celebrated openly. Others watched from the shadows. But change was now visible in everything. New initiatives were announced. A DEI council with decision-making authority. A mentorship program for underrepresented medical students. A quarterly review process with anonymous reporting for discrimination claims. And heading the review board? Dr. Amara Lewis. Kravitz pulled her aside after the announcement, smiling slightly. "You tore the ceiling down," he said. "No," Amara replied. "I just found the cracks. It was already broken." Months passed. Seasons changed. Amara remained at Ridgeway. But now, she walked the halls not as a curiosity or a controversy but as a leader. She treated patients, mentored new interns, sat on panels, spoke at conferences. And every time someone asked her how she did it, though she managed to stand up in a place built to shut her out, she always said the same thing. Excellence is the loudest rebellion. One day, Darren came into her office with a grin. "A match for my cardiology fellowship," he beamed. Amara smiled, hugging him. "Where?" "Hopkins." She laughed, tears pricking her eyes. "You're going to love it there," she whispered. And then, on a quiet afternoon in spring, Amara walked past the front desk where it had all begun. A new receptionist sat there, now a black girl in her early 20s, flipping through a medical textbook during a break. She looked up, saw Amara, and smiled nervously. "Dr. Lewis?" "Yes. I just wanted to say thank you. My cousin told me everything you did. If it weren't for you, I don't think I'd be brave enough to take this job." Amara walked over, placed a hand gently on the desk, and leaned in. "Don't let anyone tell you where you belong," she said. "Especially not in a place you've already earned." The girl nodded, eyes shining. As Amara turned to leave, a nurse called from down the hallway. "Doctor, we need you in room 213. She didn't hesitate. She adjusted her coat, straightened her name badge. Dr. Amara Lewis, MD. Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Cardiology. And then, she walked back into the work she was born to do. The end. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.